On the night of May 2nd, 2018, Dushyant Sharma walked straight into a trap without realizing it would be the last thing he ever did. He was drawn in by the promise of a romantic evening, driving through the dim streets of Jaipur, completely unaware that danger awaited him. When he arrived at the apartment where he thought his date was waiting, the atmosphere quickly changed from excitement to something far more sinister. As the door shut behind him, the familiar world he knew vanished, replaced by a nightmare carefully planned by those he believed he could trust. Dushyant Sharma was born in 1992 in Jaipur, the capital of Rajasthan in northwestern India. He was the second child of Rameshwar and Baihanti Sharma. Tragically, the couple had recently lost their firstborn to an illness that claimed the child's life at just 1 year old. Following Dushyant's birth, they welcomed their youngest son, Piyush, into the family. Although Dushyant and Piyush brought joy to their parents, Rameshwar and Baihanti struggled with the lingering grief from their earlier loss. Focusing their energy on raising their two sons became a healing balm for the couple. As the family settled into their routine, Rameshwar worked as an accountant at a local cooperative while Baihanti managed the household. This close-knit environment highlighted Dushyant's reserved nature. Unlike other children, he wasn't prone to mischief or teasing his younger brother Piyush. This calm demeanor reassured Baihanti. During his primary school years, Dushyant excelled academically but remained solitary, preferring quiet moments at home. He especially enjoyed spending time with his mother, Baihanti, watching her cook and learning simple culinary techniques. His solitude deepened in high school as his interest in technology and the digital world grew. Dushyant spent countless hours online, largely avoiding social interactions. Despite this, his social media presence painted him as outgoing, frequently sharing well-dressed photos that suggested attendance at various events and nightlife outings. Baihanti noticed Dushyant's introversion but chose not to worry. She focused instead on his strong adherence to Hindu traditions, ensuring he faithfully participated in family rituals and practices. She was confident that when Dushyant started his own family, he would be a supportive husband and a cherished member of his household. In 2010, after completing high school, Dushyant enrolled in an engineering program at a university. Meanwhile, Piyush followed in their father's footsteps by studying accounting. Rameshwar and Baihanti took pride in their son's academic progress. However, in 2012, tragedy struck when Piyush was involved in a fatal accident just as he was preparing for an internship as a secretary. The loss plunged the family into deep sorrow. To protect Dushyant, Rameshwar turned to traditional Hindu practices, giving him protective talismans and rings. The couple also began searching for a suitable partner for Dushyant to ensure the family lineage continued. In 2014, after graduating from university, Dushyant secured a position at a mining company and was appointed as a project director. Around this time, Rameshwar and Baihanti met with a family from their community whose daughter, Vitu, was single. After several thoughtful meetings, both families agreed that Vitu would be a good match for Dushyant. They arranged a formal engagement ceremony, during which Dushyant and Vitu met face-to-face for the first time. The mutual attraction between them provided both young people with confidence in their parents' decision. In May 2015, Dushyant and Vitu were married in a ceremony that faithfully adhered to their family's rituals and traditions. Their marriage flourished with mutual respect and support. Vitu managed household duties while Dushyant worked at the company, and he was always ready to assist her, especially in the kitchen, which he found particularly enjoyable. Vitu quickly earned the affection of her in-laws, who treated her like a daughter. In November 2016, the couple welcomed their first child, bringing immense joy to grandparents Rameshwar and Baihanti. It seemed that after enduring so much heartache, life had finally become kind to them. However, behind the harmonious facade, Dushyant spent long hours online and eventually created a fake profile on a dating app. Under the alias of a wealthy businessman from Delhi, he connected with Priya in February 2018. Priya, born in 1991 in Rajasthan, came from a middle-class family with a university professor father. She was an exceptional student, accumulating numerous certificates and medals that adorned her family home. However, her parents were concerned about her increasing rebelliousness, as Priya was known to challenge them to achieve her goals. Her outstanding academic performance allowed her to choose from a wide range of university programs. In the end, Priya decided to pursue an arts degree at Jaipur University. In 2012, she moved there, relying on her father for financial support, who sent her $250 a month. However, as someone never satisfied with her circumstances, it wasn't long before Priya, captivated by the luxury and comforts of the city, found this amount insufficient. To supplement her income, she began taking various training courses alongside her studies, aiming to secure a job in public administration. In her second year of university, while browsing the newspaper for potential job openings, Priya stumbled upon an ad that piqued her interest. She jotted down the details and later visited the location. To her surprise, she discovered it was an escort service offering money for recruiting other university girls. Her initial reaction was to decline, but upon learning about the potential earnings, the ambitious Priya reconsidered. Before long, she started working for the agency. From that moment, Priya became obsessed with money, specifically with obtaining it easily. She constantly envisioned herself surrounded by wealth and luxury. Driven by these dreams, she soon launched her own business, a website offering high-profile escorts to wealthy businessmen. However, her transactions were nothing but a scam. Whenever clients contacted her, she would send them photos to choose from, and then demand full payment up front. After meeting them at their hotels to collect the cash, she would disappear, turning off her phone and vanishing without a trace. Although the scheme required her to frequently change phone numbers, this was a minor inconvenience compared to the substantial sums of money she was making. With her newfound wealth, Priya expanded her collection of clothing and accessories without worrying too much about her bills, and her desire for opulence only grew stronger. Priya knew exactly who her ideal clients were. She targeted men aged 35 to 50, preferably married, as they were more likely to stay silent after being scammed, fearing public humiliation or the loss of their marriages. However, in 2014, one of her victims finally mustered the courage to file a fraud complaint with the Jaipur police. As a result, Priya was tracked down and arrested. Although she posted bail and was quickly released, she immediately began scheming new ways to make easy money, which led her to commit an ATM robbery. Once again, she was caught and arrested, but surprisingly, she managed to secure her release the very same day. In early 2018, Priya started a relationship with a bank manager. Initially, she played the role of a typical girlfriend, and they even moved in together. But suddenly, without any prior conflict, she began threatening to file a false report of intimate abuse against him, demanding $12,000 in exchange for her silence. Unintimidated, the bank manager reported the incident to the authorities, and Priya found herself behind bars once more. Despite her repeated offenses, she was back on the streets by February 2018. That same month, she created a profile on a dating app and met Dikshant Kamra. At 21 years old, Dikshant was originally from Jaipur and had recently worked as a model and producer in Bombay. Mismanagement of his finances had led him to accumulate $30,000 in debt, eventually forcing him to return to his hometown. After their first in-person meeting, Priya and Dikshant quickly started a romantic relationship. In an attempt to be as honest as possible with her, Dikshant opened up about his life, even sharing his most personal struggles, including the financial problems he was facing. Priya, on the other hand, kept her true occupation a secret and fabricated a life that didn't exist. When the truth about his girlfriend eventually came to light, Dikshant didn't distance himself. Instead, he saw an opportunity. He asked Priya to use the dating app to connect with a wealthy businessman from Jaipur who could help him clear his debt. This request coincided with the appearance of a new contact in Priya's app, and the cunning Priya recognized the opportunity her beloved was seeking. In March 2018, Priya and Dikshant rented an apartment together, and shortly after, he introduced her to Lakshya Walia, a high school friend. The couple quickly realized they could involve Lakshya in their sordid plan, offering him financial compensation in return. Meanwhile, Priya continued to exchange messages with the businessman until she finally succeeded in seducing him into meeting her in person. Their first date took place at a restaurant, and the supposed chemistry between them worked so well that throughout April they continued to meet, usually at the same place. On May 2, 2018, with the real scheme in mind, Priya invited the businessman to her home. Thrilled by such an invitation, Dikshant eagerly accepted. After agreeing on an initial meeting point around 7 p.m. that Wednesday, Dikshant informed his father that he needed to go to work to handle an urgent matter, promising to return in about an hour. He then drove to the location Priya had given him. Along the way, she called to tell him that she was with two good friends who wanted to meet him. Meanwhile, as the hours passed and it was nearing 9 p.m., Rameshwar grew anxious and tried to contact his son, but Dikshant cut the call and then turned off his phone. A few minutes later, Dikshant's mother also tried to reach him. This time, he answered, apologizing and explaining that the police had impounded one of his company's trucks and were demanding a fine. To keep the story believable and cover his tracks, he told her he would likely return home after midnight or, at the latest, the next morning. Nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. Upon arriving at Priya's address, Dikshant was ambushed by Dikshant and Lakshya, who tied him up and covered his face. Meanwhile, Priya demanded that he hand over $12,000. Realizing that this was an impossible sum for him to produce, Dikshant was forced to admit that the persona he had created online was a lie. Priya, confused, didn't believe him. However, when she searched his wallet and found his ID and driver's license, she finally understood that she too had been deceived. During this time, Dershian's family tried repeatedly to reach him, but his phone remained off. As midnight came and went, his father, now desperate to find his son, gathered some neighbors, and together they searched the streets, hoping to find some clue to his whereabouts. Despite visiting several police stations, they found no leads. On the morning of Thursday, May 3rd, Priya forced Dershian to call his family, demanding they provide the money or they would end his life. The shock and terror left his father speechless for a few seconds until a female voice on the other end jolted him back to reality. The harshness of her words motivated Rameshwar to try and take control of the situation. After hanging up, Priya and Dikshant took Dershian's debit card and demanded the PIN. However, they quickly realized that the daily withdrawal limit wouldn't allow them to get the full amount they demanded. Additionally, they grew increasingly worried that the family might alert the police. Deeply frustrated by the failure of their plan and sensing that there was no way out, they decided to end Dershian's life using a sharp weapon. Afterward, Lakshya returned home to change his clothes while Priya and Dikshant cleaned the apartment. Once they were done, they got into Dershian's car and drove to a market where they purchased a large suitcase with wheels. Meanwhile, unaware of the tragedy that had already unfolded, Rameshwar managed to gather the money and, before noon that Thursday, deposited it into his son's account. He then sent a message to Dershian's phone, informing him that he had fulfilled his part of the deal. As soon as she received the message, Priya went to an ATM, covered her face, and withdrew the maximum amount allowed by the bank. Back at the apartment, she and Dikshant placed Dershian's body in the new suitcase and loaded the heavy burden into the victim's car. As an additional precaution, they placed fake license plates on the car and set off toward a forested area on the outskirts of Jaipur. There, they abandoned the remains before picking up Lakshya and returning to their apartment. By this time, the lack of news from the captors had left Rameshwar's nerves shattered, prompting him to go to the police and file a report. The search for Dershian and his captors began immediately. Unsure of what to do next, the trio decided to stay in the apartment. However, they were acutely aware that they would soon need money to escape. The solution came from Priya, who, as usual, devised a plan to scam a man. She met with her target at a hotel, asked for payment up front, and then excused herself, claiming she needed to pay the driver before quickly leaving the scene. When Priya returned to the apartment, Dikshant and Lakshya had finished cleaning and had even purchased a fake license plate for Dershian's car. Confident that they had covered all their tracks, they got into the vehicle and drove to a train station, planning to leave the city early the next morning. While the trio was preparing to flee, on the night of Thursday, May 3rd, 2018, a passerby stumbled upon the abandoned suitcase. Believing he had found something valuable, he opened it, only to be horrified by the contents. Shaken by what he had discovered, the man immediately contacted the authorities. Forensic experts arrived, and the unidentified body was transported to the morgue. The preliminary autopsy report revealed that the victim had died from multiple stab wounds to the face. Notified of the discovery and the physical characteristics of the body, investigators contacted Rameshwar to confirm whether it might be his son. When he arrived at the hospital and saw the body, the numerous wounds made the already horrifying experience even worse. However, upon recognizing the amulets Dershian was wearing, Rameshwar knew without a doubt that it was his son. During the subsequent investigation, it was discovered through phone records that, in the days leading up to his disappearance, Dershian had called the same unknown number several times, a number not linked to anyone in his circle. Satellite tracking allowed authorities to locate Dershyan's device and confirm that it had been in close proximity to the mysterious number on the night he went missing. Hoping the information would lead them to the perpetrators, the police followed the signal to an address. However, when they arrived, they found only an empty residence. While forensic teams collected evidence from the apartment, luminol tests revealed numerous bloodstains, and within hours, more than 100 items were recovered for analysis. Neighbors identified Priya and Dikshant as the residents. Early on the morning of Friday, May 4, 2018, the phone records placed the unknown number near the Jaipur train station, prompting the police to rush to the location. In a scene reminiscent of a movie, Priya, Dikshant, and Lakshya's attempt to flee was thwarted by officers who quickly arrested them. At the police station, all three confessed to their involvement in the crime, although their attitudes varied greatly. While the two men showed signs of remorse, Priya remained disturbingly unconcerned. Her calm demeanor even led some officers to question whether she fully grasped the severity of the situation. On September 12, 2018, the trio appeared before the court for the first time, charged with unlawful confinement, murder, destruction of evidence, and criminal conspiracy. During the hearing, the court confirmed their pre-trial detention. Initially, each defendant hired their own legal team, and over time, they began blaming one another for the crime. However, Priya soon became the face of the case, drawing intense interest from the public and the press. The media's fascination with Priya grew to such an extent that numerous outlets sought interviews with her, but she rejected them all. Despite multiple attempts to secure bail, her requests were consistently denied by the court. The joint trial took place in November 2023. After hearing witness testimonies and reviewing the prosecution's evidence, the judge declared that the facts of the case were clearly established through circumstantial evidence. On November 23, 2023, the court found Priya, Dikshant, and Lakshya guilty. The following day, the court sentenced all three to life imprisonment for the murder of Dushyant Sharma. The sadness on the faces of the convicted was evident, with Priya unable to hold back the tears that streamed down her cheeks. Although Rameshwar closely followed the trial, the thought of facing those responsible for his son's death was unbearable. However, even from a distance, the final judgment brought him a sense of relief after 5 long years of waiting. While the scars of the tragedy remained unhealed, Dershyan's parents found renewed strength not only in their grandson, but also in Vitu, who, having moved past the deceptions of her late husband, continued to provide Rameshwar and Baihanti with the love and care she had always shown them. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. On April 28, 2024, the pastor of Solid Rock Church delivered his usual sermon. The atmosphere was lighthearted, with laughter filling the room as Pastor John Paul J.P. Miller spoke of himself as a charming, attractive, and humble man, a guide to finding God. His words resonated with the congregation, and the mood remained joyful. After concluding his sermon, John Paul made a series of unusual requests. First, he asked everyone to stand. Next, he insisted that no one ask any questions after he made an important announcement. Then he requested that everyone leave the church in complete silence without making any comments. Lastly, he urged the congregation to continue attending services regularly, mainly to keep up with their donations. A heavy silence fell over the church, and John Paul's words not only deeply affected those present, but would be remembered for years to come. He made a shocking announcement. His wife, Micah Miller, just 30 years old, had taken her own life the previous day. John Paul J.P. Miller married Allison Miller on February 26, 2000, and they had 5 children together. J.P. had a deep love for Jesus, which led him to start working as a pastor when he was around 20 years old. In 2006, he began holding church services in a library, attended only by his family and a few close friends. After some time, J.P. constructed his own church. When J.P. was 28, he met Micah, who was just 14 years old at the time. Micah and her family moved to Myrtle Beach in 2008, and that's where Micah and J.P. met at his church. Micah even worked as a babysitter for J.P. and Allison. J.P. and Allison's marriage started having serious problems when Allison accused him of having relationships with minors and being addicted to prostitution. The church urged J.P. to get therapy, but he refused. Despite these serious accusations, he kept preaching as if nothing was wrong. This caused some members of the congregation to leave because they couldn't reconcile his actions with their Christian beliefs. In 2015, J.P. and Micah began a secret relationship, although it wasn't really a secret because Allison eventually caught them in the act. J.P. and Allison's marriage ended in divorce in 2016. The following year, J.P. proposed to Micah, and they got married in his church, with J.P. officiating the ceremony himself. After they got married, things started to get worse. Micah revealed that J.P. began abusing her in every possible way, sexually, financially, and emotionally. Despite this, they stayed together and even went on mission trips to countries like Ethiopia and Mexico. Their religious beliefs didn't allow for divorce, and it seemed like Micah was determined to make the marriage work until she just couldn't anymore. By November 2022, things had become unbearable. Micah left to stay with her family because she couldn't take it anymore. J.P. sent her an email saying that when someone hurts him, he retaliates instead of forgiving. When Micah decided to move in with her sister, J.P. threatened both her and her sister. In February 2023, despite all their issues, J.P. and Micah signed a prenuptial agreement 6 years after getting married. At that time, they were living in the church, which was excluded as a marital asset if they got divorced. Basically, if they divorced, Micah would get nothing. The agreement also stated that neither of them would talk about the church's internal matters or publicly discuss their problems. On October 8th of the same year, Micah filed for divorce, but the case was dismissed because they said they wanted to give their marriage another try. However, just 10 days later, J.P. filed for divorce since they were no longer living together and wanted to end the relationship. This case was also eventually withdrawn. J.P. didn't stick to the terms of the prenuptial agreement. During his sermons, he often talked about the problems he was having with Micah, telling the congregation that she had mental health issues. Many church members, seeing how J.P. was talking about his wife, felt sorry for Micah and offered her their support. By this time, J.P. had already set his sights on another woman, He openly said that his plan was to pray, get rich, and find himself a hot woman. JP also claimed that his enemies had tried to harm him, referring to Micah during their heated arguments, but he said it didn't bother him at all. He claimed to pray for them, hoping they would find repentance, but insisted that their actions were not against him, but against the kingdom of God. In February 2024, Micah was admitted to a mental institution. On the day she was set to be discharged, the doctors and nurses informed her that her husband had taken her wallet and car keys. When Micah was finally released, JP was nowhere to be found, and her car wasn't where it had been parked. She called the police to report that her husband had stolen her belongings and had been manipulating her since they met, making her appear insane. The police contacted the pastor to get his side of the story, but he simply told them that his wife was mentally unstable, that she had an episode like this every year lasting about a month, and that he wouldn't return the car until this phase passed because the vehicle was marital property, not solely hers. There wasn't much the police could do, as no crime had technically been committed and they weren't divorced. Throughout the story, it becomes clear that the relationship between the two was severely strained, with JP constantly slandering his wife and portraying her as mentally ill, something that must have been infuriating for her. If things were bad before, they were about to get much worse. Then another episode happened and Micah had to call the police again. Someone had slashed her tires. When she took the car to the shop, they discovered a system installed that slowly deflated the tires, something that could have caused a serious accident if she hadn't noticed it in time. But that wasn't all. A GPS tracker had also been installed, allowing someone to monitor her every move. She told the police who she suspected was responsible, but without evidence it was just an accusation. Later that day, while she was at a gas station, her husband showed up. She told him she didn't want to talk and asked him to leave her alone. He reacted violently, threatening to post a topless photo of her on Facebook, to which she replied that she would press charges if he did. Micah recorded the entire interaction. The pastor left, but he continued to follow her. Micah called the police again, and an officer met her at her location. While she was explaining everything that had been happening, she received a call from an anonymous number. The officer told him to leave her alone, to stop contacting her, and warned that if he didn't, a restraining order would be issued. Micah told the officer she feared for her life, explaining that since she was 14 years old when they first met, he had been trying to control everything she did, including whom she spoke with, to mold her into his way of thinking. Later that same day, Micah contacted the police again, this time requesting a restraining order. The officer met with her again and confirmed that a GPS tracker had indeed been installed to monitor her movements. And as they were talking, JP appeared. By this point, things were seriously deteriorating. Micah called the police multiple times, yet nothing was done, and JP continued to do as he pleased, stalking her, installing a GPS, deflating her tires, and behaving as though he had absolute control over her. Some days later, Micah posted a video on her Facebook account. In the video, she urges people in abusive situations to share it, hoping it might help someone. With a heavy heart, she says, "There are many women who have reached out to me because they are in abusive situations. I just want to say what so many people have been telling me lately. I knew it, but I had pushed it to the back of my mind because of my situation. You are the bride of Christ first before anyone else, regardless of your gender. Abuse is abuse, and you are Christ's bride. My Bible says that He Himself endured all the suffering you can imagine for you, so you wouldn't have to live a life of slavery and pain. Abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional, or mental, is never your fault. God hates divorce, but what He hates even more is abuse." Then, Micah filed for divorce, and 2 days later, she made her last post, which featured an image that read, "Success is not always what you see." On the 27th of April, Micah was captured on her home security camera leaving her house. Other cameras caught her buying a handgun and ammunition. She bought a sandwich and headed to a state park in Northern Carolina. Soon after, 911 received a call.
Robinson County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
You don't know where you're at?
A national park
Where's the park located at?
in Fair Bluff. I have my location on, I think, on my phone. Find my phone is on. I just did my my location.
Are you at the Lumber River State Park?
Yeah, that's where I am. I'm about to kill myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am. Just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute.
Authorities were notified, and a drone was dispatched to survey the park to determine if this was a genuine emergency. The drone located her car, which was parked, and a fisherman later reported finding a wallet with the ID of Micah Miller after hearing a woman crying. He found it in the water, where they also discovered Micah's lifeless body. After confirming that just 2 days earlier, a divorce filing had been made and a restraining order was issued, the North Carolina police investigated John Paul's whereabouts at the time of the incident. Neither he nor his lover were in the city. There are camera recordings of his car driving on a state highway, but there's no way to confirm if he was actually driving. Only a blood alcohol test was performed on Micah's body, but no autopsy was conducted, which should have included a toxicology report and an examination of the trajectory and cause of the gunshot. This would have ensured that it was self-inflicted and not caused by someone else. It appears that the shot was to the head with no exit wound, and her death was ruled a suicide. John Paul was given control over Micah's body, and he decided to have her cremated. But before doing so, just 1 day after Micah's body was found, on the 28th, JP gave a sermon at his church.
We're not going to do an altar call today. Instead, I'm going to have you stand up, and I'm going to make an announcement. And after the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement here in the building, please, if you can. So y'all can stand to your feet. Before I make the announcement, I also want to say that my request to you is that you will continue to come to church and serve and give for the next little bit. 'Cause I don't want to have. I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few days, a few weeks. I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're going to have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can. I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And she wasn't. Y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her.
3 days after her death, JP officiated a funeral for his wife, while her family held a separate one. Shortly after Micah's death, John Paul sent a message to a group chat with her family. This is what happens when you encourage someone to divorce the person they love and tell them they don't need medication and aren't sick when they really are. Great job. Micah's sister responded, "It's easy to blame others when that's all you know how to do. No one told her to stop her medication. Get that into your head. You drove her insane, plain and simple, and the surgery you forced her to get pushed her over the edge. How dare you even contact us and speak like this?" The surgery her sister referred to was a breast augmentation that the pastor had pressured his wife into getting. Micah's family started expressing numerous doubts about the circumstances of her death. To begin with, they noticed bruises on her back and scratches on her hand. The office that examined her body claimed that these might have been from when she was pulled out of the water. And since no autopsy was conducted and her body had been cremated, these doubts could not be investigated. Micah's father stated that a bullet was found lodged in a tree near where her body was discovered, one of the same bullets Micah had bought before heading to the park. It's strange that someone intending to take their own life would miss on the first attempt. He also mentioned that his daughter had never been to that location before and that the last time he spoke to her, she didn't seem like herself. She had told him she was buying a gun for protection because she feared for her life, and she knew how to use it since she had taken shooting classes. The police didn't check her car for a GPS device, despite Micah's earlier claims, nor did they confirm whether JP was actually driving the car caught on camera, supposedly with his lover. Incidentally, this is the same lover JP tried to cheat on with a waitress, to whom he left a $20 tip along with his phone number. Micah's family claims that the voice in the 911 call didn't sound like her. She spoke slowly in the recording, but normally she was much more lively, speaking quickly. Now, there's speculation that Micah wasn't alone that day and that someone forced her to make the call. If Micah was truly concerned about her family finding her body, wouldn't she have left a note or sent her location to a family member? Some people are even suggesting that her voice in the 911 call could have been generated by artificial intelligence. Where did the bruises and scratches come from? Was she alive when her body was placed in the water? Why was there dirt on her hands? And why did she buy food if she was planning to end her life? Why did she have a hair appointment that week and plans to go on a mission trip? Micah was, by all accounts, happier than she had been in a long time, finally thinking about living her life on her own, away from this man. So, why wasn't an autopsy performed? There are so many unanswered questions. This case has become a major topic in the U.S., prompting the FBI to launch its own investigation. JP's lover spoke out, referring to Micah as mentally ill and claiming she wasn't taking her medication. This woman didn't even know Micah, only what JP told her, and he was unfaithful to her, or at least tried to be. Second, the waitress JP was flirting with, to whom he sent bikini photo requests, has also come forward, sharing the messages he sent her. Just days after Micah's death, this man reached out to her again, asking how she was doing. She responded that she was fine and asked how he was, to which he replied, "Just dealing with a lot of stuff these days." The husband of JP's lover had a tragic accident that left him paralyzed. One night, while in his wheelchair near a pool, he fell in and drowned. John Paul officiated his funeral and then got involved with his widow. The Solid Rock Church website is currently offline. There were rumors that JP had been expelled from the church. There are times in life when many, if not all, of us go through low points, anxiety, and fear. Having someone beside you who is trying to make you feel like you're losing your mind only exacerbates these feelings, making you seem truly insane. And there are more people like that out there than we think. Micah knew JP was one of them, and she made sure to record many of their arguments. She even told her sister, "If I ever disappear, I didn't do it. It was John Paul." Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. In the early hours of June 14, 2006, the quiet neighborhood of Bloomfield, Connecticut, was changed forever. What seemed like just another day took a dark turn when the truth about a hidden crime came to light. Danielle Kramer, a 14-year-old girl who had been missing for nearly a year, was found locked away in a small, secret room. The discovery was a shock not only to her loved ones, but also to the investigators who had been searching for her all that time. What first looked like a simple case of a runaway teen quickly turned into a chilling story of manipulation, abuse, and horrors that no one could have imagined, exposing the terrible reality hidden behind closed doors. Danielle Kramer was born in the state of Connecticut, USA, sometime in the early 1990s. While the identity of her father remains undisclosed, it is known that her mother was a woman named Jennifer. After Danielle's birth, Jennifer remarried, and soon the family expanded when the couple had another child, whose name was never revealed. Danielle's parents ran a business that involved both a daycare center and a dog breeding operation in Bloomfield, a small town in Hartford County, Connecticut. Growing up surrounded by these animals, Danielle developed a strong affection for them. It was this love for dogs that, in 2005, led Danielle to cross paths with a young woman in her mid-20s named Kimberly, who worked as a dog trainer. Thanks to her, Danielle met Adam Galt, a 40-year-old man who also worked as a dog trainer and had experience in related businesses like dog breeding and grooming. Since Adam's business intersected with Danielle's family's business, her stepfather had briefly worked with Adam at some point. This connection led Danielle, eager to gain professional experience, to start working for Adam at his grooming and dog training business in Bloomfield and West Hartford. But what initially seemed like a healthy and innocent relationship between a young woman passionate about animals and a man experienced in the field soon turned dark and dangerous. Without Danielle's parents knowing, Adam started communicating frequently with her through messages and calls. He developed a completely inappropriate attraction to Danielle, who was still a minor at the time. Exploiting the admiration she had for him professionally, Adam began a seduction plan that quickly affected the naive girl. Adam gradually introduced Danielle to the world of drugs and alcohol, manipulating her until she agreed to an intimate relationship. He convinced the young girl that he loved and accepted her as she was, unlike her parents who were trying to raise her with stricter controls to curb the impulsive behavior typical of adolescence. Danielle, who had been described as a good girl, began exhibiting strange behaviors and became extremely rebellious towards her parents. Unbeknownst to them, Adam was the driving force behind these negative changes. At school, Danielle did not hide her relationship. It was later revealed that she openly told her friends she was involved with a 40-year-old man named Adam, whom she claimed was her boyfriend, and that she loved him. However, she also confided in them that he had hit her, and they had broken up and reconciled multiple times. By 2006, Danielle had run away from home several times, disappearing for days at a time, and when she returned, she refused to tell her parents or the authorities where she had been or with whom. It was always Adam who was behind these disappearances, testing how far Danielle was willing to go to fulfill his desires. In June 2006, Adam's manipulation reached its peak. Danielle, accompanied by Adam, went to the Bloomfield Police Department. There are two versions of what happened on June 13th. One version suggests that Danielle filed a complaint against a friend of her brother, accusing him of sexual abuse, for which she claimed her family had not protected her. However, the more widely accepted version is that the teenager reported to the authorities that she had been mistreated and neglected at home by her mother and stepfather. She expressed feeling unsafe and stated her desire to move in with Adam, an adult she trusted. From that moment on, Danielle distanced herself from her family entirely, with Adam firmly in control of her decisions. This was not the first time Adam had taken advantage of a young woman in this way. Kimberly, the dog trainer who had introduced Danielle to Adam, had also met him as a teenager. Before that, she had experienced a traumatic situation of intimate violence, leaving her very vulnerable. When she met Adam, she saw him as a hero, like someone who rescues princesses from castles. They began a relationship, and over the next 6 years, Adam transformed from a hero into a villain, one of the worst kinds. He dominated and controlled Kimberly, turning her into a sort of slave. To make matters worse, Kimberly wasn't the only woman subjected to Adam's control. Adam was also in a relationship, later described by authorities as a common-law partnership, with a woman named Anne Murphy. Despite having a stable partner, he brought Kimberly into the fold, creating a three-person dynamic, often referred to as a throuple, whether romantic or intimate. According to reports, both women agreed to this type of relationship and even lived together at times. However, it is likely that they had little say in what happened, as Adam was the dominant force in the household, punishing disobedience. It was under this same man's influence that Danielle's life took a dark turn, leaving her confused and manipulated. When Danielle didn't return from school on June 14, 2006, authorities and her parents initially thought it might be another one of her mysterious escapes, so panic didn't set in immediately. However, as days passed, it became clear that this disappearance was different. Danielle always called to say she was okay, but this time there was no contact with her family. The Bloomfield police investigated, searching, questioning those close to her, and tracing phone calls, but they couldn't find her. Months went by, and authorities hit dead ends and followed leads that led nowhere. The case of Danielle's disappearance seemed to stall over time. Though it was never fully closed, it alternated between periods of activity and inactivity, always waiting for new information that might help locate the missing girl. From the beginning, the police knew that Adam had known the missing teenager and that he had some kind of business relationship with Danielle's parents the year before her disappearance. Therefore, he became the prime suspect. Mobile phone records showed that Adam and Danielle had been in frequent contact before she went missing. In the days following her disappearance, the officers in charge of the case interviewed Adam twice. He told investigators that he hadn't had any contact with her since June 15, 2006, when Danielle called him asking for money. After urging Danielle to return home during that conversation, Adam claimed he emphasized that the police and her parents were desperately searching for her, but Danielle refused to comply. Despite Adam's assertions, the police continued their investigation, and in October 2006, they visited his residence to search for clues. However, since they did not have a warrant, Adam denied them entry into his home. Approximately 9 months after Danielle's disappearance, her mother discovered a diary that Danielle had left behind. Troubled by its contents, she handed it over to the authorities. She also provided several items of Danielle's clothing to the police, including a piece of underwear that appeared to have a stain that could be seminal fluid. The underwear was sent to the state forensic lab to develop a DNA profile that might offer leads for the ongoing investigation. In the diary, Danielle, who was 14 years old when she disappeared, wrote about a man she was involved with sexually, referring to him as X, according to various reports. Although Adam was not directly named, the police used the diary as evidence that Danielle had been sexually assaulted 7 months before she left home. Despite being questioned numerous times, Adam continued to deny any involvement in Danielle's disappearance. With Adam refusing to cooperate, the investigating officers obtained 2 search warrants for his residence in West Hartford, Connecticut, where he lived with his 2 partners. The warrants allowed them to collect DNA samples and other evidence relevant to the case. On June 6, 2007, around 9:30 a.m., the police prepared to enter Adam's home. By then, Danielle had been missing for almost a year, and although the authorities had not given up their search, their hope of finding her alive was dwindling, as they were well aware that the odds were against them. Once inside the 2-story house, the police noted that it was in disarray, with dirty sheets on the beds. In one of the rooms, they found what appeared to be sex toys. During the search, an officer noticed a large dresser that seemed out of place and decided to move it, revealing a small, locked room hidden behind the furniture. The police later described it as a closet. When they opened the door, they found something astonishing. Danielle was inside, alive. According to the detectives, there were no signs like bedding that indicated Danielle had been kept in that room for the entire year. However, they observed that she was extremely pale, leading them to wonder if she had been exposed to sunlight during her captivity. The police were uncertain how long she had been in the room, and Danielle remained silent. It was clear that she couldn't have opened the door from inside, and they were horrified at the thought of what might have happened if the officer hadn't moved the dresser. Though Danielle showed no visible external injuries, a thorough medical examination was still necessary. She was taken to Connecticut Children's Medical Center, where she remained under the care of child welfare officials and psychiatrists who were determining the best approach for reintegrating her into her family. Understanding the potential fragility of her mental health after what she had likely endured, the officers kept their questions to Danielle limited, though she was able to speak with investigators. Thankfully, reports indicated that Danielle seemed happy and expressed a desire to reunite with her family. Her mother stated that she was prepared to wait for her daughter's return to ensure it was done in the best possible way. It was also revealed that a 15-year-old boy named Jacob lived in the house where Danielle had been held captive. Some sources indicated that Jacob was the son of Adam and Ann, while others claimed he was Ann's son only. Jacob's case was referred to the Department of Children and Families, and he was later placed in the custody of a relative. For the alleged kidnapping of Danielle, the police made 3 arrests. Adam, 41, was charged with unlawful restraint, reckless endangerment, custodial interference, interfering with an officer, risk of injury to a minor, and forgery. Ann, 40, faced charges of conspiracy to commit reckless endangerment, conspiracy to commit custodial interference, and risk of injury to a minor. Kimberly, 26, was charged with reckless endangerment, conspiracy to commit custodial interference, risk of injury to a minor, and conspiracy to commit unlawful restraint. Initially, Adam's bail was set at $500,000, while Ann's was set at $100,000. However, as more details emerged, both bails were raised to $1 million, with Kimberly's bail set at $500,000. This was not Adam's first run-in with the law. In November 1997, he was arrested on drug-related charges, and in July and August 2003, he was sued for not paying a worker and lost the case. As more details emerged about Danielle's life in captivity, the police stated that they were investigating whether Adam had abused 3 other girls in the past. It was revealed that he hadn't been charged in the previous cases because the alleged victims had refused to testify. Although Danielle had been found safe and the suspects were apprehended, the investigation was far from over. Detectives discovered that while living with Adam, Danielle occasionally traveled out of state, often to Florida, where she adopted a new identity as the niece of Adam's common-law partner. Once she was mentally stable, Danielle provided statements revealing that she had been with Adam since her disappearance, spending nearly all of her time inside the house and not attending school for the entire year. She also mentioned that she had changed her hair color multiple times to avoid recognition and confirmed that the downstairs room, where the hidden compartment was found, had indeed served as her bedroom. The police later obtained another search warrant for the residence, and investigators gathered several boxes of evidence. Among the items seized were fishnet stockings, a pistol, taboo adult magazines, a black leather collar, and spiked bracelets. They also discovered documents related to a terminated pregnancy. In subsequent interviews, investigators questioned Danielle about her diary and whether Adam was the mysterious ex she had mentioned. She nodded in agreement. Danielle also disclosed that shortly before being discovered in the small hidden room, she had visited a location in West Hartford to terminate a pregnancy, though she refused to identify the father. However, it was clear to everyone involved, and the authorities already had the primary suspect in custody. Following Adam's arrest, police uncovered homemade adult videos of a disturbing nature, filmed with very poor quality, and initiated the difficult process of identifying the young women featured in them. Reports indicated that these videos had been uploaded online at various times. Danielle informed authorities that Adam had used her as a model for both explicit photos and videos. The police also investigated a second location where they suspected Adam had engaged in inappropriate activities with Danielle and other underage girls from the community. In July 2007, at Hartford Superior Court, Adam pleaded not guilty to charges of having a relationship with Danielle months before her disappearance. During his felony court appearance, he also pleaded not guilty to 11 counts of risk of injury to a minor. His defense attorney argued that there was no evidence of force or coercion, claiming that none of that had occurred in his client's home. Instead, he characterized the case as one involving individuals, referring to the 3 accused, who were trying to protect a young girl from physical and sexual abuse within her own family, as reported in June 2006. He further claimed that the girl had access to a cell phone, attended school, and was free to go wherever she wished, claims that Danielle herself had contradicted earlier. In response, the prosecution challenged the defendants' portrayal of themselves as concerned individuals rescuing Danielle from abusive parents. They reminded the court that the evidence suggested Danielle had been exploited to produce adult content. The attorney representing Danielle's parents dismissed the defense's claims that Danielle had been abused at home and found refuge in Adam's residence as a complete fabrication. The police also disputed the defense's narrative, revealing that Danielle had informed them that the accusations against her family had been fabricated and exaggerated by Adam. She admitted that she didn't want to make such statements because her parents didn't deserve them, but Adam had pressured her, and she complied out of fear of his anger. The prosecutors further asserted that Adam had repeatedly assaulted Danielle and coerced her into terminating a pregnancy resulting from these heinous acts. They also presented various DNA evidence obtained from clothing found in Adam's home, which confirmed the dark activities that had taken place there. In December 2007, a team of forensic experts determined that Adam was unable to comprehend the legal proceedings or assist in his defense. As a result, the judge declared him temporarily incompetent to stand trial. The judge ordered that Adam be transferred to the forensic division of the Connecticut Valley Hospital for a 60-day evaluation period, during which he could receive treatment. At the conclusion of this evaluation in February 2008, an expert testified to the judge that Adam was capable of understanding the charges against him and could assist in his defense. In addition to facing charges related to Danielle's case, Adam was hit with another kidnapping charge after a woman came forward claiming that she had been a 15-year-old runaway in 1998 when Adam abused her multiple times while she lived in his home and worked at his business. Since the statute of limitations on the potential sexual assault charge had expired, the prosecution could only pursue a kidnapping charge in the new case. As a result, Adam faced up to 160 years in prison for the charges connected to Danielle's disappearance and the 1998 case. After insisting on his innocence for an extended period, Adam, then 42, surprised everyone in March 2008 by admitting his responsibility in the crimes. He reached a plea deal with the prosecution, pleading guilty to 8 charges, including second-degree sexual assault, kidnapping, risk of injury to a minor, and conspiracy. The prosecution recommended a sentence of 30 years in prison, followed by 20 years of probation. The judge indicated that the prison term would be at least 20 years. The sentencing hearing took place on July 11, 2008. The victim impact statement on behalf of Danielle, who was 16 at the time, was read in court. In it, Danielle directly addressed Adam, accusing him of hurting her more than anyone else ever had and expressing her hatred for him because of it. She added that she felt ruined inside in many ways and no longer knew how to distinguish between what was real and what was a lie. Adam exercised his right to address the court before hearing his sentence. He stood up and read a handwritten statement, looking directly at Danielle as he apologized. He said he was ashamed of himself, filled with regret, and added that there was nothing he could say to change the past. Ultimately, Adam was sentenced to 50 years in prison, followed by 20 years of probation. He would be required to register as a sex offender upon his release. The judge remarked that he could not determine whether Adam had a distorted view of reality or was truly evil, but ultimately said that the distinction didn't matter, as the community was not safe with him in it. On the same day, the sentencing of Anne, 41, and Kimberly, 27, was also scheduled. In tearful statements before the court, friends and family members described Anne and Kimberly as kind souls who were also victims, dominated and controlled by Adam. They asked the court for leniency, acknowledging that both women had committed crimes, made poor decisions, and showed a lack of judgment. Anne and Kimberly also apologized to Danielle in court. Kimberly expressed relief at being arrested because it removed her from what she called a destructive environment. The judge acknowledged the difficulty in determining their sentences, but ultimately concluded that on the spectrum between being Adam's victims or accomplices, or both, they were more victims. However, he recognized that they deserved to pay a price for their involvement in the crimes. Each was sentenced to 10 years in prison, suspended after 3 years, followed by 5 years of probation. After being missing for a year and undergoing a near-miraculous recovery, Danielle Kramer was able to resume a normal life despite the trauma she had endured, and the perpetrators of her suffering received the punishment they deserved. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.